Welcome, everyone. We are waiting a bit to let people join this webinar, so we will start in a bit. In the meantime, if you would like, you can share your name and your organization in the chat. Okay, thank you and welcome to our webinar on online child abuse in Central Europe. What young people's experiences reveal in the V4 region, new research findings. My name is Enikő Vas. I'm a communication specialist at Terre des Hommes, and I will be today's host of events. We announced earlier that Réka Molnár, Hintalovon's association communication specialist, will moderate today's event, but she could not be here today, so I'm filling in for her. Super. Before we start with the topic of today's webinar, let me share you the housekeeping rules. The language of the webinar is English. The event is recorded and will be made available after the webinar, along with the presentation slides. The technical organizer of the event is Child Hub. On our site, you will find a lot of resources for child protection specialists, so please go and visit this site. If you have any question that you would like to address to the speakers, please put them in the Q&A section. It is much easier for us to follow this section. We will have a question and answer session at the end of our presentations, at the end of all presentations. If we don't have enough time for every question, we will send you the answers after the webinar along with the recording. So please put your questions in the Q&A. Automated live captioning in English is available, and you can turn this on, the captioning at the bottom of the screen. Super. So the topic of today's webinar is online child abuse in Central Europe, what young people's experiences reveal in the V4 region, new research findings. Online child sexual exploitation and abuse, unfortunately, remains significantly underreported and insufficiently understood across Central Europe, despite growing evidence that children in the V4 region are particularly exposed to digital risks. During the Seen the Unseen project, which is aimed to address this evidence gap by collecting comparable data across Hungary, Poland, Czechia, and Slovakia on young people's experiences of online abuse before the age of 18. This research explores prevalence, forms of abuse, help-seeking behavior, vulnerability factors, and institutional trust across the region. The research was conducted by Republican Foundation in collaboration with Hintalovon Child Rights Foundation. It was founded by Safe Online, and thank you for the support. You can see our speakers here. Márton Schlanger is the senior researcher from the Republican Institute. Karolina Balogh is researcher at Hintalovon, and Dominika Rácz is a lawyer at Hintalovon as well. So we will start with Márton Schlanger, and he will talk about the findings of the research study done in the V4 countries. I will stop sharing my screen. Just a moment. Okay, I did not stop sharing my screen, yes. So now Márton can prepare to share his slides. And let me tell you a few words about Márton. He works as a researcher and political analyst at the Republican Institute in Budapest. He holds degrees in political science and economics from Eötvös Loránd University and Corvinus University. As an author, he publishes work in both English and Hungarian on topics like energy policy, disinformation, and the labor market. So, Márton, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the introduction and the chance to share my slides with you regarding the research that we all conducted. I trust that you see the slides as well, and hopefully you'll see them as I change them as well. If not, I'm sure my colleagues will be able to let me know. I think that most of our participants, almost all of our participants, are new in the sense that they have not taken part in a previous workshop or event that was conducted in this research or related to this research or this project. So I hope that for the majority of you, all of this data will be either new or the explanations will be new. And I'm sure, in fact, I know that the other two presentations will be brand new for you. But let's get into it. Without further ado, my job here is to disseminate the results, to tell you about the results of our V4 research related to child abuse, online child abuse. I hope that you see that I changed slides as well. First of all, we talked briefly about the problems thanks to Annika, but the reason why we thought that V4 requires immediate attention is because crimes related to child abuse, child trafficking is quite prevalent in the V4 region, and there's a huge gap between the amount of people that recognize online risk and also recognize that online child sexual abuse is present in the region as a large problem. There's also other factors because there's other factors that made us think of the V4 as a good basis of our research or a good first step for our research. There were a number of questions being asked that we wanted to answer in this research that we conducted in the 4 countries. Some related to the quality of life and digital well-being of the respondents, which were mostly used as background variables when we were trying to determine causes of abuse or results of abuse. We also tried to look at the types and commonalities of online child abuse and also help-seeking attitudes and the differences between the 4 countries. One thing to note is that essentially the methodology was exactly the same in all 4 countries. There were 2 small differences. One was that in Poland, the sample size was smaller. This was only due to the confines of the project. The other thing was that in Slovakia, the results that we received ended up being, the sample that we received ended up being something that is a more vulnerable sample, more young people aged 18-25 that were raised in a non-conventional household, maybe even as orphans, maybe even in an institution. Less of them were raised by both parents, more by divorced parents or other relatives. But apart from that, all of the data is similar. And when we look at the V4 data in this presentation, you will have to keep in mind Slovakia is a bit different than the other 3 countries. Okay, so let's continue. The first thing that I want to talk about briefly is the digital culture and screen time aspect of our research. We see that in terms of strictness, you can see this graph here, Hungarian parents were those most strict in the V4 region. 75% of them, or 75%, I should say, of young respondents report that their parents had some kind of restriction in place regarding their online time or online exploration. The least strict were those of those parents and other caretakers of Slovakian children. Only 42% of them had any regulation in place. When we look at screen time, we see that Poland specifically had really high screen time and social media usage of the 4 countries, and also really low digital education coverage. So based on this data here, we can see that the Polish youth were most exposed perhaps to dangers of the online world with lower digital education and higher screen time than the other countries here, and and perhaps less strict parents as well compared to some other countries. 18% of Poles spent 8+ hours daily online as adults, which is triple of the V4 average. So a vast amount of time spent online. In terms of mental well-being and social life, which is an aspect that we, based on the Hungarian results, see as really important predictors of exposure to abuse, we see that Czechia has highest life satisfaction, and Slovakia has lowest life satisfaction, could also be a result of the more vulnerable upbringing. Low social contact is most prevalent in Poland. 26% of Polish youth report less socializing than other peers. This is also something that we see in Slovakia, but Slovakia also has a small group that is highly social, so it's more extreme distribution. We see that Slovakia has a high number of people that only have one person that they can confide in. 35% would report this, and this also includes parents and closest friends. So it's quite a high number. We see that Hungary has the highest. Hungary has the lowest number of low confidence, so it's essentially the best situation. We also see that in terms of life satisfaction, even though Czechs are the most satisfied with their lives, Hungarians are the most satisfied with themselves, but not as satisfied with their lives in general. So it's really interesting. One of the most interesting parts of this research was the abuse threshold index that we created. We asked about some behaviors that would be considered as abusive, some more extreme, some less extreme. So all the way from the teacher getting political during class to actual sexual abuse. So there was a wide gap between these behaviors, and we asked in the case of each of them, do you think this behavior is acceptable? And based on the answers of all 4 countries, we created an index of the countries that shows how high the abuse threshold is of youth in a certain country. And here we see what is kind of expected based on what we learned about the Slovakian youth and their background, family background and exposure, that Slovakian youth is the most accepting of abuse, closely followed by Poland, which is really interesting. We see this in the entire research, that even though Slovakian youth in this research is more exposed, Poland very often scores similar to Slovakia. So it's really alarming in terms of the Polish situation. And Hungary and Czechia in many cases are quite similar, not in this case though. Hungarians are the least accepting of abuse, Hungarian youth. Their average acceptance of abusive behavior was 1.7. So this is really interesting, this kind of duality between Slovakia, Poland, Czechia, and Hungary. So Czechia and Hungary are closer, Slovakia and Poland are closer. Perhaps the meat of it, I would say, is the actual exposure to online abuse in childhood. We see that, which is in line with our research and what we know about the Slovakian sample, that they have the highest exposure to abuse, but actually Polish youth has a similar exposure, 33% exposure to significant abuse during their childhood. So every third Polish youth has significant exposure. Same goes with Slovakia. And the situation is similar in these 2 countries, even though over 60% of Polish youth were raised by their parents, and actually only 30-something% of Slovakian youth were raised by their parents, and over 10% were raised in an institution. So the difference should not be this little between these 2 countries. And then we see Czechia and Hungary are quite similar. Only 10% of youth in these 2 countries report significant abuse. And a large number, specifically with Czechs, 53% of Czech youth report no abuse whatsoever online. They also had the lowest screen time, which is kind of understandable in this situation. We also asked about the type of severity of online abuse. We see that the peak risk age is between 11 and 18-year-olds for young people, specifically 18 to 14-year-olds, so young high school or lower high school years would be the most exposed to this kind of abuse. This is the age where the social norms of being empathetic maybe, and the social norm of not accepting bullying as is perhaps less engraved in youth. So before the ages 15 to 18, where they become more aware of the emotional situation or the emotional state of others. Of course, we see, based on talks with young people, that they are also highly emotionally intelligent in many cases between 11 and 14, but they're also more exposed to abuse, and there are more exposure to online abuse. And you have to keep in mind, even though you are exposed to abuse between 11 and 14-year-olds, it doesn't necessarily mean that your abuser is also so young. It can be someone older, younger, it can be an adult. So this is something to keep in mind, but definitely the peak risk age is the high school age. Most affected teens, once again, are Slovakian teens. This is due to their more vulnerable social status, but Poland is close second. We see that Czechia and Hungary are similar. We see that only about 50% of them are exposed to abuse, like I said in the previous slides as well. And we see that the most common forms of abuse are more severe in the case of Poland and Slovakia, exclusion and humiliation, while in the case of Czechia and Hungary, it's quote unquote only trolling and defamation, forms of abuse that are more common in all countries but are less severe based on the options that we have. And 1 in 10 young people actually experience constant or severe abuse across the region during their childhood years. So 1 in 10 would be the number to quote, where you talk about the amount of people, young people, that are severely abused in the region online. Well, two more things before I close off, because I know I only have a couple minutes left. One is the trust in help the help seekers and behavior, trust in helpers and trust and the help seeking behavior. Sorry, we see that most trusted actors in terms of help seeking are close friends, parents, and guardians. In the V4 countries, close friends scoring highest, because in the case of Slovakian youth that were the less of them were raised by their parents, the trust towards their parents or a guardian is actually lower. We see that family members and just in general close personal relations that are known in real life and not just online are actually really important. We also see that the most important expectations of those asking for abuse are actually, apart from the problem to go away, which is obvious, is actually to feel safe and to be taken seriously, much more so than for the perpetrator to have consequences or anonymity or discretion. These are valuable values that are mostly valuable to Slovakians that have less social trust and have a more exposure to trauma. So this is really interesting. Specifically, I think, to be taken seriously, I think this is an area in which all V4 countries struggle. The way they trivialize abuse, the way they try to tell those exposed to abuse to shrug it off. This is something to keep in mind. There are some barriers to help seeking. Some of it is fear and shame, but most of it is actually that the respondents think that their exposure to abuse was not as serious or could have been solved just by themselves. So they think that the abuse was less serious. But some of them didn't seek help because of fear of dismissal or shame. And the fear for or of the perpetrator, so fearing that the perpetrator will have consequences or fear that the perpetrator will take their revenge, is actually only high in Slovakia, showing a more dependent relationship between abuser and abused in that sample. Finally, to cap it off, we see that online abuse is actually a widespread phenomenon in the region. You can say 50% of youth experience it, 10% severely experience it. We also see that Slovakia and Poland are in a state of alarm, specifically Poland, because in Slovakia, the sample can be deceiving, but in Poland specifically, you can really see that this sort of exposure to abuse, digital well-being, mental well-being is actually quite low, close to that in Slovakia, which it shouldn't be. And also the help-seeking gap is the last really interesting thing. That 45% didn't seek help, most of it because they didn't think that the abuse was serious, but still this gap should be lessened, because only 10 to 15% seek constant support, which we think is a really low number, even if the type of abuse or online abuse is more common, more trivialized, and less serious. I think this is all that I have for you right now. Thank you very much for listening to me. We are, of course, open to any questions, but for now, I surrender the floor to Annika.
Thank you, Márton. Please, if you have any questions regarding to Márton's presentation, put them in the Q&A section and we will answer them later on. And as a mother of two, as a Hungarian mother of two teenage boys, I can confirm that we do have really strict rules regarding internet usage. So thank you for enforcing this with the study as well. So our next speaker is Karolina Balogh, a researcher at Hintalovon and also a research fellow at ELTEST Center for Social Sciences in Hungary. With the background in sociology and criminology, her work focuses on child protection systems and child safeguarding. She completed her PhD at Eötvös Loránd University. Her doctoral research examined the crime prevention potential of the Hungarian child protection systems. In recent years, she has been involved in several research projects on child protection and mandatory reporting. So Karolina will present the findings of a qualitative survey study conducted in Hungary as a complementary piece of research alongside the V4 survey. As part of this work, a trauma-sensitive focus group study was carried out with survivors of online sexual abuse, providing deeper insight into children's experiences and support needs. This study is not published yet, will be published during the summer. So Karolina, the floor is yours. Karolina, we cannot hear you. You are unmuted, right? You are not unmuted. So I'm ask you to unmute. So let's see if we can unmute you from here. No, it seems that you have an issue with the microphone. Can you please talk some more?
Me?
Now we can hear you.
Oh, I don't know what was the problem. I share my presentation again. Sorry for this technical issue.
No worries.
Okay, I hope everything will be good now. Thank you, welcome everyone. My name is Karolina Balogh and I'm a researcher at Hintalovon Child Rights Foundation. Today I would like to share findings from a small-scale qualitative research project conducted in Hungary by the Hintalovon Child Rights Foundation with young people who had lived experience of online sexual abuse. This research was designed as a qualitative complement to the larger questionnaire-based research conducted across the V4 countries that Márton present for you, and it was implemented only in Hungary. Our aim was not only to better understand young survivors' experiences, but also to reflect on how research on such a sensitive topic can be conducted in a trauma-sensitive and ethically responsible way. Because when we talk about online sexual abuse, we are dealing with a topic that is often invisible, normalized, and deeply shaped by shame, silence, and fear of judgment. And this means that the way we ask questions matters just as much as the answers we receive. The research had two closely connected goals. First, we wanted to better understand how young people with lived experience perceive online sexual harms, whom they trust, how disclosure happens, and what kind of support actually feels helpful. And second, we wanted to generate practical knowledge that could improve prevention programs, reporting system, and victim support services. So what do we mean by trauma-sensitive design? While trauma-sensitive design is an approach to research, but also to service delivery and program development that starts from the recognition that many participants, especially survivors of abuse, violence, or exploitation, may carry lived experience of trauma that can be reactivated even though seemingly routine interactions. Rather than treating trauma as something an individual simply has to manage, a trauma-sensitive approach tries to embed safety, trustworthiness, choice, collaboration, and empowerment into every layer of a project, from the way it is framed and communicated to recruitment, data collection, and follow-up. In research on online sexual abuse, we consider this not simply a procedural safeguard, but an ethical stance. At every stage of the project, we asked ourselves, how can we reduce the risk of re-traumatization, support participants' sense of control, and create conditions where meaningful insights can emerge? These 5 principles on the slide guided the entire research process. And now let me briefly explain how the research was conducted. At the center of the research was a group workshop where we explored the main research questions through different tasks and discussions. However, before inviting anyone to the workshop, we conducted individual pre-screening interviews with every applicant. The methodology was designed in a trauma-sensitive way from the very beginning. These interviews were carried out jointly by a psychologist and a sociologist, and their purpose was not gatekeeping, but creating safety. The interviews help us understand participants' motivation for joining the research, explore their experiences in a confidential one-to-one setting, and assess whether they had supportive relationships and emotional resources that would make participation safe. Importantly, this was the only stage of the research where participants spoke directly about their own experience of abuse. We deliberately chose not to revisit these personal experiences later in the workshop. Participants were also informed that they could pause or withdraw from the research at any point, and that support from the foundation would remain available if participation became difficult. During the workshop itself, participants explored online risk, help seeking, and support through a fictional character rather than through their own personal stories. A methodological choice that created enough emotional distance to discuss difficult experiences in a way that still felt safe. Before the findings, I'm going to show you one important methodological lessons from the recruitment. One of them was that trauma-sensitive principles need to shape even the very first contact with the potential participants. At first, we shared the call for participants through the foundation's website and social media channels, but nobody applied. After reflecting on this and discussing it with both professionals and young people, we realized that the language we used was simply not accessible. We used the term online sexual abuse, but for many young people, this felt too clinical and too broad to recognize it as something connected to their own experiences. So we revised the call and started using plain language and much more concrete examples. For instance, have you ever received an unwanted intimate image as well? This allowed young people to recognize their own experiences without immediately having to define them as abuse. And this reflects something we learned through the project, People who have experienced abuse often do not use that word to describe what happened to them, especially in the early stages of disclosure. We also try to reduce practical barriers to participation, for example, by removing a fixed workshop date from the registration process. And finally, recruitment happens through multiple channels, including professionals, peer networks, and social media, because trust plays a very important role in whether someone feels safe enough to engage. Before moving to the findings, I would like to briefly explain how the workshop itself worked. The workshop was really the methodological centerpiece of the research. Rather than asking participants to speak directly about their own experiences, we explored the research questions through a fictional character, as I mentioned earlier. Participants were only given one starting point to create a 14-year-old teenager. Together, they created a girl called Rebecca Esther, you see on the slide, a very detailed and realistic character. She had divorced parents, a younger sister, different relationships with her mother and father, close friendships, online activities, and everyday stresses that felt familiar and believable. Through Rebecca's story, participants reflected on questions such as what kind of online risks do children face? Who do they trust? Who would they turn to if something harmful happened? And what kind of support would actually help? Using a fictional character created enough emotional distance to discuss highly sensitive issues safely, while still allowing participants to engage in a very deep and meaningful way. Our first important finding concerns how young people perceived online risks. Participants identified a very broad spectrum of harmful experiences in online space. These ranged from unwanted sexual messages and images sent by strangers to pressure from peers or romantic interest to share intimate photos, manipulated or AI-generated images, and exposure to disturbing or highly sexualized content online. Participants also spoke about the risks of platforms and online environments where harmful content becomes highly accessible and in some cases even normalized. But perhaps the most important finding was not the specific forms of harm themselves. It was how quickly many of these experiences become normalized. Participants explain that unwanted sexual messages or friend requests from strangers may initially feel shocking, but over time, many young people simply get used to them and start ignoring them. In other words, some forms of online sexual harm gradually become perceived as a part of everyday online life. At the same time, participants also highlighted that harm is highly contextual. The same experience may feel very different depending on who is involved, how vulnerable the child is, and what happens afterwards. For the fictional character, Rebecca, participants even ranked different online harms from less serious to more serious, ranging from strangers' contact to image-based abuse, such as intimate images being shared in online groups. Our second key findings focused on what children actually need after experiencing online sexual harm. We asked participants to imagine an ideal situation. If a child becomes a victim of online sexual abuse, who or what would actually help? Interestingly, participants mostly mentioned people who were already part of the child's everyday environment, trusted adults, friends, psychologists, sometimes doctors, and in more serious situations, even the police. But what mattered most was not simply who provided support, it was how support was offered. Participants repeatedly emphasized the importance of emotional safety and non-judgmental responses. Several young people mentioned that children may avoid involving parents if they fear the situation is not serious enough to justify the worry or panic it may cause. Here again, we could see the normalization of harm. Psychologists were seen as potentially very important, but only when trust would develop. Participants also highlighted that if a child is taken to an unfamiliar professional under pressure, they are unlikely to speak honestly. Building trust first, allowing the child to get to know the professional was seen as essential. This became especially clear in one of the workshop tasks, where participants were asked what message they would leave for adults and professionals supporting children affected by online sexual harm. And perhaps the clearest message participants gave to adults and professionals was that do not judge, do not blame, create an emotionally safe environment where children feel understood, believed, and supported. So to conclude, perhaps I would highlight just a few reflections from this project. One important lesson for us was that trauma-sensitive design matters from the very first moment of the contact. Even the language used in requirement can shape whether young people feel able to change. We also saw how easily some forms of online harm can become normalized, which may make it harder for children and young people to recognize when something harmful has happened or when it might be worth seeking help. And finally, participants repeatedly highlighted the importance of emotionally safe responses. Again and again, we heard that children are more likely to seek help when they feel listened to, understood, and not judged. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Karolina. As I mentioned, this study is not available yet, but if you want to receive it, I strongly encourage you to follow Hintalovon Foundation social media, perhaps, or subscribe to Hintalovon's newsletter. We will send these links to you in the email that follows this webinar. Okay. So our last speaker today is Dominika Rácz. She is a lawyer at the Hintalovon Child Rights Foundation and the head of Child Rights Clearinghouse program at the same foundation. Besides providing counseling services, delivering training programs, she contributes to the foundation's professional activities. Dominika will present some case studies from Hintalovon's experience, enriched with data from the National Media and Info Communication Authority from Hungary. So, Dominika, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for being here. First, I will just share my screen in a minute. Yes, and I hope that you see what I see. Okay.
Yes, we see.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you. So, first of all, I think when I was preparing for this webinar, I was trying to bring some other perspective to these data, as Karolina and Marci explained, and maybe trying to talk about the impact of the survivors' lives or the emotional part of being part of an online sexual harassment or an online bullying situation. And that's how I was asked to talk about our cases. We at the Hintalovon, we are having a child rights clearhouse program, which means that people like parents, professionals, and also children can turn to us and ask for help in issues regarding children's rights. And we also have some kind of just a moment cooperation with the National Media and Info Communication Authority, which is, I think, has a huge part in these cases because of the internet hotline. So before the cases, I would like to talk a bit about the internet online activity. Yes. The Internet Hotline is a legal aid service run by this office since 2011. Anyone can submit a report if a content seems unlawful or harmful to the development of minors. That's why I brought all the categories in which a report can be submitted, which could be a content posted without consent, an online child sexual abuse, child pornography. Unfortunately, our law uses the child pornography expression, but we are trying to use other kind of words like online sexual abuse or the child sexual abuse material. Also, a category could be online harassment, racist content, content promoting illegal psychoactive substances, violent contents, phishing contents, or other contents which could be harmful to minors. It works as other hotlines in the world. Experts will investigating the reports, and they can contact the service providers, and also may forward the reports to the competent investigative authorities. I also brought the numbers of the last year's report, which is, I think, a huge number. Like more than 2,500 reports were received by the hotline in 2025. And the third part of all reports fell into this online child sexual abuse category last year. More than the half of these reported links were to content suspected to be child pornography, and these majority of these cases concern children under 13, mainly girls, but also the number of boys were very high. Yes, sorry, just a moment. The Internet Hotline has every year it has more and more reports, and which means on one hand that there are more and more cases, but on the other hand it also means that people like parents and children are parents' awareness, sorry, are more. So they know more about the possibilities, what to do if they face an online sexual abuse. And let's turn to our activity. And I was thinking of cases, which one to bring here, and I was trying to think of the conclusion or what can we bring of these cases. And I think it really meets the key findings of the study we were talking about. So the first case is an online sexual harassment, which was a good example of our cooperation with the National Media and Information Authority, this Internet Hotline part of it, because a 19-year-old, I think a child or almost an adult, turned to our clearinghouse, and she was talking about a case which happened to her at the age of 13 or 14, when she had a chat with someone who she didn't know. It started to be a friendship, but then it was some kind of other communication. and she got a lot of messages. They weren't pictures, they were texts, which were really, as Karolina said, that these unfalsified messages and very disturbing text, which was not just not age appropriate, but also was very disturbing for a 13 or 14-year-old girl. And at that time, she didn't do anything because of the other key finding of this study, that it was kind of normalized in her life. But after many years, when she faced another kind of situation, she just realized that this was very bad what happened to her, and she didn't want that this person who she had a chat with couldn't do it again with other children like she was at that time. So she turned to us, and at the same time she went to the internet hotline as well, and we were trying to cooperate with the colleagues of the internet hotline, and we were trying to find these, or they were trying to find the IP address of this Skype profile. She did not have all the messages because it was deleted, but what I saw, it was really disturbing for me as well, not as a child. So what I wanted to say with this story, it was that we have to also deal with the aim of the survivors, or of the people who had some kind of abuse experience, that one main aim is to help other children who could be also experiencing this bad method. The other case was a grooming case, which I think a very good example, but it's a bad example how it works. So one parents and divorced parents were turning to our clearinghouse, and which was, I think, very nice, because it also meant that these people who are the trusted adults of this child who we were talking about were trying to do something together because of the best interest of their child. The mother told me that she never heard about grooming, but she found information on our website about grooming, and then she realized that maybe this happened to her child as well. So her child was 13-year-old when someone on a platform where anonymous chatting was available, were having a chat with someone who said that he was like 20 something, and they were falling in love to each other. I mean, this kid thought that she was falling in love, and this other person waited more than half a year. So at the very moment of being 14, which is which is a very important age of the criminal law, because after the year of 14, everyone can have consensual sexual connection with someone. So he waited at this age, and when they met in real life, it turned out that this person was a 50-something-year-old guy, so completely different than this girl could imagine. But on the very first rendezvous, they had sex, which I think really shows how could be this manipulation, how deep and how bad would it be for someone to believe everything after being manipulated for more than a half year. And they had they tried to meet each other for like almost 2 years, and when the girl had some virus on her phone, then her cousin accidentally her cousin had some pictures about screenshots, which was firstly on this child's phone, and then she realized, the cousin, that something bad is going on, and reported this, or told this to her parent, and the parent told this to the child's parents, so everyone knew, I think, from the very beginning what to do, which was a very good thing that this cousin didn't just let her go with this creepy screenshot. She asked for her parents' help, and this story happened in August 2025. Because when I'm preparing to this session, I wrote to the mother what happened since September of 2025, and they had just one hearing, and they don't know what is going on, but they are trying to wait in this kind of very difficult loads. And this story meant also for me that how a trusted adult may be next to someone who realizes or who experiences a situation which she never thought. But in this situation, this girl was thinking that she was still in love with this guy, and she didn't realize that what happened to her. And I think what was the best, or the I think so the parents' attitude, which there wasn't any kind of feeling or sign that would make this girl embarrassed. She could really had help from the parents without being embarrassed by anyone around her. And the last story, because I would like to stay in the minutes which I got, and to make you ask some questions, was an online bullying case when also two students were very, very good friends, two girls, and they also shared the passwords of their Instagram and other kind of social media platform applications with each other. So so one of them, when they had a quarrel or a fight because of another girl, which they had some friendships, this first girl went into the account of this girl, and she found some pictures, which was sexting pictures. I mean, this friend had a chat with a boy, and she sent some pictures of herself to this boy. And then this girl, who was a bit hurt by this girl who had the sexting stuff, called another girl and just shared the screen with this other girl and showed her what happened, that their common friend just sent some pictures of nude pictures to this guy. And this other girl made a screenshot of the shared screen, which she just sent in 2 minutes to the WhatsApp group of the whole class. And then this story happened, I think, in like 3 minutes. And it was very interesting how the community reacted, how the parents reacted. And my key finding was with that key that digital literacy and online safety education is needed also for children, but also for their parents and professional, because the parent of this girl whose child looked into the account of her friends said that it wasn't unlocking the application. It was with a password, and she didn't really understand how what is about right to privacy, or what is if it wasn't looking someone's chatting with an approval or not. And I see Radike, I'm just a very last minute. And the community reacted that this girl who showed the screen was also a very bad and unfaithful person. So the community couldn't really react to get all the perspective of the actors of this situation. So thank you for your attention, and I give back the floor to Annika because I think my time was over, but thank you very much.
Thank you. Please stop sharing your screen. And I would like to ask the other speakers also to switch on their screens. I see that in the Q&A question, a lot of questions regarding the methodology of this study that Márton, the Republican Institute, carried out. And I would like to read out, I know that you already answered it, but I would like to read out Anna Kishi's question, and please answer live as well for our other members. So Anna Kishi is asking, is there any data on the participation of schools in terms of prevention or help?
Yes, thank you for the question. Like I wrote, first of all, we see that help actors that are schools or teachers are under-trusted relative to their actual helpfulness, which means that when we ask about certain actors, whether they would be trusted with helping an abused young person, teachers and schools received below average trust scores. But when we asked an open-ended question from those who have experienced abuse, who was the person or actor that actually helped them deal with the situation, teachers were among the top mentions. So there is a deficit of trust related to the actual helpfulness in the case of teachers. And one other thing, because you also asked about prevention, was that there are a large number of young people, specifically in Hungary, where the education system or the school curriculum either included digital education or there were speakers invited to speak about or teach about digital education. So I think also in Czechia, maybe I don't remember from the top of my head, but definitely in the case of Hungary, there was a high number of respondents that received digital education from their schools. So both in prevention and in dealing with these issues, schools and teachers were actually really active.
Thank you, Márton. I don't see any other questions, but I do have one question, Karolina or Dominika, or both of you, if you don't mind. As I was listening to your presentation, I found it really stunning that children find the online, that they are abused online, normal. So, and what as child protection specialists or professionals, what can we do to change this? So to children to find, to see that they are abused online. Who would like to start?
Yes, Karolina, you just unmuted, but I try to talk about this in my presentation, that I think education to all roles of this problem, like parents and children and professionals, would be very, very important, but not just once in a way like also at school, but also for parents, and which I think that contemporary helpers are also very important. They have a very important role. As I talked with children from this age, and I think that sisters, brothers, or friends could also be a very good helper if they are also aware of things what would be like an online abuse. But yes.
Yes, I agree with you, Midi. We have to sensitize children and their parents to children have to learn child rights in the school, and we need a lot of prevention program for them in the schools, and I think in the digital space too. Yes.
Okay. Do participants have any other questions regarding to the topic of the webinar? As we mentioned, so we shared the V4 study, the English version, the link here, but we will send it out also in the email after this webinar. The study that Karolina was mentioning, it will be available during the summer. So we will send you some details on how to get that study if you are interested. So if you don't have any other questions, we would like to thank you for participating on this webinar. Hope you find it useful, and see you on our next occasions. So thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone, for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye.